And that involves redoing the whole map,
Oh,
all the labor.
oh my goodness.
Yeah, but anyway, once it's done, that's quite a big event.
This is the windmill hilltop that goes up to Five Corners, off to Putney Mountain and down into Westminster.
Thank you for doing all the maps. They're going to go see it again.
They don't erode, they don't wash out.
Right, well, we just move the trail and leave it on the map.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming to this great event. Right? This has been, I guess, maybe almost 2 years in the making, right? And we finally have brought this project to its completion. It's a great thing. So here, why don't you step right over. So, I want to first and foremost thank the Radfords for their gift of the 55 plus or minus acres that made this possible to connect to this western side of our ridgeline. It gives us another access up to the ridgeline trail, and so it really opens up hiking opportunities for people on this side of the ridge. So it's a wonderful thing. And also the Radfords funded the parking lot and the construction of this cool bridge that crosses the Grassy Brook. Unfortunately, the gentleman who built the bridge isn't here today, but we'll thank him in absentia. That's Phil Pellerin. He has a business called Custom Cut Timber Frames, I think that's it, in Westminster West. We also would like to thank Sam Bourne, who said he was going to be here. Sam, when he found out that this project was going to happen, he knows Terry and Edna. He volunteered his time and his equipment to build the parking lot. He's an excavator and a landscaper, so he, made this happen. He was really a generous thing. He's a wonderful gentleman. If you ever need excavation, call him. I also want to thank Roger Haydock, who single-handedly designed and constructed and engineered and spent probably 400 hours mapping out this trail and building it. So he is like the guy who did it. There was some other folks, volunteers who were involved in that. Tony Coven, Joe Richards, John Foster, Andrea Capron. I have my cheat sheet here, I just don't want to forget anybody who actually did some work. And Gary Livornia, who lives down the road, also helped out by doing some fine-tuning of the parking area here and setting this stone. And I thought he might be here too, but he's not. And let's see, and Rick Cowan, our former board chair, who shepherded this project from its beginning to its end. So thanks everybody for all their work on this. Andy Tepfer, kiosk and beautiful map. Jeff Nugent over there, who does all our trail maps. So there's a lot of people involved in making all this happen, and I appreciate everybody who worked on it. There's Sam Bourne. You just missed your big recognition. Anyway, yay Sam. So Terry's going to say a few words about his motivation for the donation and the name of the trail, and so I'll turn it over to you, Terry.
Okay, I'm going to stand up here if that's okay.
Okay, sure.
So everybody can
yeah.
hear me.
Okay.
I guess I should start at the beginning. I was born in 1939 on April the 1st, so I was an April Fool from the beginning. And because I was born so late in the family, the next sibling was 16, I had some very complicated relationships. I had nephews and nieces that was older, almost as old as I was. And when I married my wife, who was quite a bit younger than me, she had nephews and nieces that were older than her. So things got quite complicated. But anyway, my eldest nephew, Paul Smith, was born in 1941, so he was 2 years younger than me, and we instantly became bosom buddies right from the beginning. And it was wartime in England, so things were very tight. There were no toys, there was no candy. Ice cream was kind of unheard of to us anyway. But we thought we were the richest guys in the world, really, and we felt that we were at the centre of the world in the village where we lived, which was Woodhouse, which was a suburb of a big city, Sheffield, which at that time was a big steel centre in the world. We, of course, had no money, no funds whatsoever, and a lot of kids were born at that time, at the beginning of the war, for some reason, so there were hordes of kids around the village. But we had to find pursuits that didn't cost anything. And going in the woods and running in the fields was what we did. We always had football, now they call it soccer, because all you needed was a ball. We always had some beat-up tennis ball to play. Also, we became big collectors of things. And what we was collecting was free. We couldn't buy anything. And the first thing we were into was postage stamps. I had brothers that were in the forces, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and we got letters from exotic locales, and I became expert at steaming these stamps off the letters. So we had stamp collections, and then all the kids had cigarette cards, you know, that come out of the cigarette packets, and marbles, and there's a big collection of marbles. And we used to play in the schoolyards and try to win marbles and cigarette cards from somebody else, you know, and increase your cards. And then there was train spotting. It was the era of steam trains. It was at the apex, and they all had numbers, and about 10% of them had names. And you got sheets with the names and the numbers on. And we spent hours and hours at the stations looking for what we called namers, the ones with the names and the numbers. And any station, any mainline station in the UK at that time would have dozens of kids there, train spotted. Finally, the pursuit that was less laudable, but acceptable at the time, was what we called nesting. That was going around the woods looking for birds' nests and making a collection of eggs, and every kid at that time would have a collection of eggs. It was completely accepted in the 40s and 50s. This was a legitimate hobby. And if you went to the museums, there was a big museum in Sheffield. They had glass cases they'd have the parent birds and the nest in its habitat and the eggs. And it was kind of sad, really, but they'd have 100 or 200 of these cases, and it was something that was totally acceptable. But Paul and I never felt good about it. And one day, I'm thinking now, 70 years ago, 1948, we were sitting down, and I said, Paul, we're going to do something for the birds. And we made a pledge that we would do something eventually for the birds. And that pledge stuck with me. Now, unfortunately, he was a smoker, and he got emphysema, and he died in 2003, at 62. So he was gone, but this thing stuck with me. And in about 2005, my niece rented the Kipling house on Kipling Road, invited us to go up there. She came with her family from England. The Kipling house is part of the Landmark Trust, which is a British institution, which takes castles and historic houses and redoes them and then rents them. They happen to have 4 properties in the US, and they're all in this area. And the Kipling house is one of the properties. So we went to the Kipling house and we discovered Brattleboro. I'd never been to Vermont. We discovered Brattleboro, and I'd never seen something where everybody does his own thing. Doesn't matter who you are, how you dress, or anything. You're accepted. There's a big dramatic clan here, and artists. It was really fantastic. So the result was that after she'd gone back, for the next 3 or 4 years, we came up here and rented a place called the Sugar House, which is on Kipling Road, and again belongs to the Landmark Trust. We rented that place and we're hiking here, and we discovered snowshoeing. We'd never done it before. It was just tremendous. One day we were at the Sugar House, and I picked up a newspaper, and I think now it was the Reformer. In the Reformer there was 2 or 3 houses listed for sale with pictures, and I read about this house or this cabin along Grassy Brook here that had a lot of land with it, which it said adjoined the Pinnacle lands. And I thought, well, what is the Pinnacle? We went to Putney the next day, and we were talking about hiking, and suddenly a guy intervenes and says, well, the Pinnacle trails are near here. So for the first time, we went on the Pinnacle trails along the ridge, and we were real thrilled and impressed with what we saw there. And that night, we were sitting there, and it suddenly hit me. I said to Edna, "This is it." She says, "This is what?" And I was thinking about the pledge and whatnot. I said, "We've got an opportunity here." And we wound up making an offer on the property to none other than Rick Cowan, who owned the property. So we bought it from Rick, and I would say this thing was simmering there, and I think 2 years later this property here came for sale. It was 16 acres, and I looked at the maps and I said, well, it adjoins our property. This is a way of accessing our property from Grassy Brook. So we made a bid for this and bought this, which was 16 acres. And we decided what we would do is donate about 55 acres and ask for a trail to be made along here. And I called up the president of the association of the association connected with it, and it's none other than Rick. So I said to Rick, you sold me this ground, now we want to give it back. And
What a deal.
he was completely mystified. There was a big silence on the telephone. He didn't know what I was talking about. You know? He thought I was giving it back to him. But anyway, that's how it started, and it's 2 years ago. And we asked that it be completed within 2 years. And I looked at when we signed the whatever you call it, the declaration there, the legal thing, and it was September the 19th, 2 years ago. So we well within the time, you know. So that was fantastic. But we're very happy. I'm very happy that we managed to keep that pledge. And I would say that if in the 1940s Paul and I had been taken and transported and dropped in the Vermont woods, we'd have thought we'd died and gone to heaven. And talking about heaven, I know he's up there and he's laughing and he's saying to himself, "You son of a gun, you kept the pledge." So thank you very much for joining us in this moment, and we're thrilled with what has been done here with Roger and Sam and Phil, who did all the work, and of course Sam did all this work here, and we already knew Sam, and he volunteered, which was fantastic. So thank you for coming, and I know Roger's going to talk a little bit about the trail.
Okay, so when I get an assignment to build a trail, the first thing I do is start walking the land and using different colored surveyor ribbons, mark out every plausible trail segment I can identify. The idea is I'm trying to find what the different possibilities are to eventually link them together to make the best, what I think is the best combination. So when I am walking through the woods, I'm looking to see that it's not dangerous, that any route we might go on is going to drain properly, and those are the two absolute rules you can never break, drainage and safety. And then after that, I look to try to minimize the steepness of the trail to make it easy for people who aren't used to hiking to hike it, and minimize the roughness of the trail. But sometimes on those two rules, steepness and roughness, I have to compromise. And on this trail, we had to do a bit of compromise on the roughness of the trail. This is a rough trail. And then another consideration I have to take into account is what's easy to build as compared to hard to build, okay? And you try to go for the easy ones, but this was a challenging piece of land. This is a steep section here. And so we had to do some switchbacks using side hilling, and there's lots of boulders, so it's the roughest trail anywhere in the Pinnacle system for that short distance. But on this ridge, when you have steepness, you also get beauty. And the section that you're about to go on here, the first third of this trail, is just really beautiful because it's steep. And so that was a challenge in an engineering sense to build it. It was a lot of hard work, but it's really pretty. We also had another challenge in that at least the lower part of the trail has seeping bedrock. So trying to deal with keeping the trail dry when the water's coming up from underneath was a challenge. But we hope, surmounted that. We're hoping. So the first half of the trail accomplishes most of the elevation gain that the entire trail is going to achieve. So in the first half it's steep, the second half is nearly flat. But it's a really pretty section in here, and then a lot easier, and then it connects up to the Cascade Trail, which, if you've ever wondered why it's called the Cascade Trail, I can understand why you might wonder why it's called the Cascade Trail, because the Cascade Trail usually doesn't cascade unless it's been raining hard. So usually there's no cascade, but then that continues up to almost to the pinnacle, and you just make a final left turn for the last 500 feet or so, and you're at the pinnacle. So this is a really beautiful, inspiring route, and that's what I try to aim for in a trail, and I think, at least I feel inspiration when I go on it, and I sure hope everybody else can share in that inspiration of this beautiful trail that Terry and Edna have given us. And I think, did Coca-Cola help contribute to this?
Yeah.
Yes? So I would say we could call this trail the cause that refreshes. Thank you.
Okay.
Ready?
I'm going to let my wife.
Okay, and now come on, you can hold over this weapon. Yeah, you're gonna hold this, it's a little shed.
Oh, face us, right?
Oh, yeah, maybe go in the back, yeah.
There we go. Now we're talking.
Yay! So those who would like to hike, take it away. It's yours. And I have trail maps here. If you want to pick one up, you know, just sort of look at the whole Pinnacle Trail system. That includes this new trail.
Thank you.
Yep.
And there will be a map box here. We just, I'll take it.
Yeah, I saw the seal.
Yeah, I love doing it. I mean, it's not part of the thing that walk control perfect for me is inauguration. Lucky enough.
I was like, if I don't leave, I didn't realize how far. And the pay is
The pay is but after the initial burn, which burns off pretty quick, it